Back to one of our top stories now. The National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Shamila Batohi, has acknowledged that the institution has moved in a snail's pace in addressing several cases related to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. She says the NPA has set up a unit to deal with these cases. Now, there's also been allegations of political interference by high-ranking officials in the prosecution of the TRC cases.
We recognize and appreciate that these cases have taken a long time to come to, there are few cases that have come to court, but these cases have taken a really long time to be addressed. And there are various reasons for this. But in order to expedite process in this matter, we have actually, from September this year, we set up a new portfolio in the NPS, that's the National Prosecuting Service of the NPA, in order to deal specifically with matters that emanate from the TRC. And what we've done is we've managed to get a deviation from the Department of Public Service Administration in order to hire prosecutors on contract for a period of 3 years who are dealing exclusively with TRC matters in the various regions. So far, a total of 59 cases are under investigation, with 56 new matters to be referred.
For more on the just-ended media briefing by National Director of Public Prosecutions, Shamila Batohi, I'm joined now by David Lewis. He's Executive Director of Corruption Watch. Mr. Lewis, thank you for your time this afternoon. Now, the NPA address was quite expansive. It touched on a number of issues. But what do you make of that address? What really springs out for you?
Well, the TRC matters were dealt with at the end of the briefing, and obviously it's a relief to hear that those matters are going to be finally prosecuted after some, 20-plus years. But the major part of the address dealt with the slow pace, the apparently slow pace of the prosecution of corruption cases, and the departure from office of the head of the independent of the Special Directorate, Advocate Cronje. There are different rumors and unsourced statements about why Advocate Cronje left, but it's a very serious departure. And, there seems to be a general consensus that she left, because there was not sufficient support from government for her unit, both in providing resources and particularly in fast-tracking the appointment of personnel to the unit. B, that there is still a gross problem of incompetence at the NPA. And C, there are still prosecutors who have connections and implications in state capture that are working at the NPA. And although Advocate Batohi said that she had not encountered direct sabotage, I'm not sure sabotage is never, or open sabotage. Sabotage is never open. The rumors have it that there is sabotage, and she inherited a very, very damaged and compromised organization. And corruption cases, large corruption cases, are difficult to prosecute. And this is what has taken the sort of time that it has taken, although I think they really need to speed up what it is that they're doing from now on.
Mr. Lewis, with the departure now of Advocate Cronje, the situation at the NPA still remains the same. There's still the issue of capacity, which was brought up, the lack of financing, the lack of support from government for the unit that Advocate Cronje was in. And also the last issue that you mentioned, prosecutors who themselves are involved in state capture in one way or another, still being part of the organization. With those factors still firmly in place, as far as we know and as far as we can see, and then with the departure of Advocate Cronje, is there likely to be any sort of change?
Well, I would imagine that the problems have reduced somewhat. I mean, I know that there have been attempts to enhance the capacity of the staff of the NPA. I know that there have been efforts that have been somewhat successful to get highly reputed private advocates into assisting with prosecution. I know that some of those advocates implicated in state capture have departed. But undoubtedly, it still remains a problem institution. But after all this time, I would imagine the positive capacity that they have should now be able to prosecute some of there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in the corruption cases, I think, although all of them are difficult. I think the NPA are maybe a little bit guilty of not prioritizing properly. And also, although one doesn't ever want to take up a big case and lose it, a certain amount of risk has to be taken. And they need to start doing that pretty soon.
You talk about a level of risk that needs to be taken, and maybe the NPA being guilty of not prioritizing properly. What Shamila Batohi did say is that the investigative directorate has to be strategic on which cases to take on. When one speaks of strategy and being strategic, what would be the criteria for choosing which cases to take on and which then to prioritize?
Well, I think, firstly one takes on the cases in which one has strong evidence and a reasonable prospect of success. One doesn't take on a case simply because it looks like a good case to take on and, then go and get hammered in court and lose the case and to satisfy the public even more. But also, I think that they should really be prioritizing cases involving very senior politicians and senior business people. And I think they should be taking up those cases in which money has been taken from the poorest of the poor. And two cases that immediately spring to mind, but they're by no means the only one, are the VBS cases and the Estina Dairy case, where really the poorest people had money stolen from them. In both cases, in one case by senior provincial politicians, in both cases by senior provincial politicians with the involvement of some senior national politicians. So I think that those kind of cases should really be prioritized.
Mr. David Lewis, thank you very much for your time and your insights today. Very much appreciated.